ready to start. So good morning, members. Welcome to this first meeting of the Isle of Skye and Raasay Committee of the new session. I'll cover the first few items on the agenda until the committee appoint a chair. So just to let you know and remind you that the meeting has been recorded, and the recording will be available on the Highland Council's YouTube channel after the meeting. So if we could just go through the start of the agenda. So apologies for absence, there are none, so we're all present. So item 2 is declarations of interest. Any declarations of interest, members? No. Okay. Item 3 is recess powers. The committee is asked to note that the recess powers granted by the council at its meeting on the 30th of June did not require to be exercised in relation to the business of the Isle of Skye and Raasay Committee. So members content to know that?
Yep.
Okay. Next item 4, is the appointment of chair of the committee. So nominations are invited for the post of chair of the Isle of Skye and Raasay Committee. So over to you, members.
I nominate Councillor Finlayson. Alistair.
I'm happy to second that.
Is that Drew second that? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I take it there's no more nominations. So congratulations, Councillor Finlayson, and I'll now hand the meeting over to you.
Thank you very much, members, and thank you very much, Alistair. I think it's important to start off by saying we've all been saddened and shocked by the terrible tragedies that took place in 2 local communities last week, one in our own ward and one in our neighbouring ward. And as well as the communities of Slate and Dorney, the whole of our Skye and Loch Alsh and beyond is trying to come to terms with the awful events that did take place. Clearly, our thoughts and prayers are with all those affected directly, and also the wider communities right across the West Coast, who, as we know, will also be affected for some time yet. And I would ask that, as a mark of respect, we observe a 2-minute silence before we carry on with any other business. So if we could please start this now. Thank you, members. And on behalf of the Skye and Raasay committee, I'd like to extend the deepest sympathies to all of those who have suffered directly and indirectly from the tragic events of August the 10th. And has been widely reported, members and officers, along with officers from other agencies, churches and community groups, are all here to support in whatever ways are necessary and will be for some time. So thank you very much, members. Moving on then to item agenda 5, appointment of vice chair and civic lead. Have we any nominations?
Chairman, I'm happy to nominate Councillor Munro for that position.
Thank you. And I'm happy to second that nomination. Any other nominations? No. Councillor Munro, are you happy to accept this role?
Thank you both for your nomination. I am happy to accept it, and I look forward to working with you, Chair, with other members in the weeks, months and years ahead. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Moving on then to other member appointments. So we've got 3 member appointments to make, and the first one's to Skye Citizens Advice Bureau. Have we any nominations for this role?
Chair, I would nominate yourself for that role if you're willing to accept that.
Indeed, yes. Any seconder?
I'll second that.
Okay, Councillor Stewart, thank you very much indeed. The second organisation is Skye Council for Voluntary Organisations, and I'd like to nominate Councillor Munro. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Miller, thank you very much. And Skye Access Forum, and again I'm happy to nominate Councillor Miller. Do I have a seconder?
I'll second that.
And Councillor Stewart. Okay, so that's the three member appointments. Skye Citizens Advice Bureau is myself, Skye Council for Voluntary Organisations, Councillor Munro, and Skye Access Forum, Councillor Miller. Agenda item number 7, the minutes of the Isle of Skye and Raasay Committee from 21st February. And we're just to note that these were approved at the Highland Council meeting on 10th of March. Are we happy to note, members? Thank you. Okay, moving on to substantive business. We've got the Scottish Fire and Rescue local committee performance report. And I think we've got Mike Collier and Carla Stevenson both with us. Who's going to lead off? Is it yourself, Mike? Or Carla?
Chair, yeah. Yes, it will be myself.
Okay, so we'll hand over to you, Mike.
Okay, Chair, thank you very much. And on behalf of myself and Carla, from a personal level, could I extend my deepest sympathies and condolences for the events, the tragic events last week as well. And from an organisation point of view as well, we know how deeply this has affected everybody. And my apologies for lateness. I was dealing with Police Scotland there for the further use of Kyle Fire Station throughout the remainder of this week. Okay, and I'm sure Carla would like to maybe add a few words here.
Yeah, just to echo what Group Commander Collier said as well, our deepest sympathies, and we are liaising with the crews to assist any way we can. And like I say, Group Commander Collier is leading on that, so my own personal condolences to the community as well.
Thank you both very much. Over to you, Mike.
Okay, Chair, so thank you very much for the opportunity to provide the overview of the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service report for Q1 2022, April to June. Overall, a positive report, but I did spot a spike in road traffic collisions, which we'll address further on. The following key current and performance indicators are how we assess our performance at this time. Accidental dwelling fires, 1 ADF, which was a chip pan related incident and did not require intervention with no casualties involved. The committee area has 1 casualty and no fatalities in a 5-year trend, which is extremely positive, indicative of the ongoing work by SFRS and partners to act on prevention and protection for our communities. There were a couple of deliberate fires, which were outdoor fires and coincided with the muirburn season. There are no issues or increases around trends or patterns over the 5-year period and well below the SFRS Highland area statistics. It takes me on to road traffic collisions. With 6 road traffic collisions for the area, which is higher than normal periods. Does not appear to be any specific reason for this spike. However, home travel and tourism is higher, so this may have contributed. The majority were standby or to make safe to assist partners, while 2 were extrications required. 2 casualties were recovered from 1 incident, and unfortunately another incident resulted in the fatality of a well-known community member. Attending local crews were supported throughout the incident and provided with opportunity for further support if required. The number was down in the 5-year trend, and the committee area is significantly better than the SFRS Highland reporting area. For unwanted false fire alarm signals, there were 24 for the committee area, and these vary across a number of different establishments. A number of repeat offenders who don't meet the criteria for intervention. However, advice and guidance is provided where appropriate to reduce these calls. The local district commander, Station Commander Carla Stevenson, engaged with Portree High School due to an emerging pattern. And this appears to be an improvement, although it is in the holidays, and we'll see as the children return to school. This will continue to be monitored and reviewed, periods carried out where appropriate. A slight upward trend against 5-year statistics, but continues to be well below the Highland figures. So one of the big areas for us now is station availability. The committee station availability is increasingly challenging, and innovative ways of supporting the operational response are being adopted, which Carla is very much at the forefront of. We continue to proactively recruit, but face significant challenges in recruiting and retaining personnel, with a desired progress towards a more locally based approach supporting the candidates. Currently working with some of our colleagues in the Western Isles, Orkney and Shetland area for a more improved model, which will hopefully support that. There's a national issue at this time due to age profiles of current personnel and the pension remedies that have been implemented. We continue to work with other partners to improve local outcomes and support those most vulnerable within our communities. Small information of note: following our exit from COVID restrictions, we've engaged with community members and resumed home fire safety visits across all categories. We've also resumed partner exercise and engagement, and will seek opportunities to improve and strengthen working relationships. We continue to work with partners to identify an opportunity for a tripartite arrangement within the Portree location. This has gained some momentum recently, and I will update on progress as and when required. So that concludes my submission for the Skye and Raasay performance report, and I'm happy to take any questions that you may wish to ask or defer to Carla as your local officer.
Thank you very much, Mike. Appreciate that. Okay, members, I'll open it up to members who may have questions or points that they wish to make. I'll start with Councillor Miller.
Thanks very much, Chairman, and thank you very much, Mr. Collier, for that report. However, it doesn't really say very much, does it really? I mean, speaking to 1 or 2 people around about the area, I find it quite alarming the number of times that stations are off the run. Information that I got sent to me anonymously, albeit anonymously. For example, on the 28th of July this month, there were no crews available on Skye at all, and even on parts of the West Coast. In fact, the only one that was on crew was Raasay, which doesn't fill us with much confidence, given that they would have to get a ferry to get across. So I wonder if it was possible, rather than is to give us if you could give us a breakdown of the number of crews that were available, even just say for the month of June, July and August. And you know, my understanding is that one of the big problems with recruiting is, of course, that it's much too. Employers have to give people too much time off to go and do all this training that's deemed necessary for the fire service, compared to maybe previous years. And you know, for example, I think, if one person fails their BA tests, then they're off the run till they pass it again. And though they could, you know, surely, for example, they could be on the crew but not using the BA because they weren't qualified. So that means that if they're off the run because of failing a BA test, then the whole crew are off the run because there's not enough people to complete it. And so therefore, I suppose, having been involved in it years ago on the fire board, etc., I just wondered, is it not perhaps time just to look at a completely new model? And I'm sure you will be aware that here in Skye, for example, we're still trying to have our air service resumed, flights from Broadford to wherever, wherever it would be, Glasgow or Edinburgh or wherever. I just wondered, is it time that perhaps the fire service could be looking at appointing a full-time station here on Skye, covering Skye and Wester Ross, and maybe using the base at the airport would be an advantage, given if flights were to resume. And the sort of my thinking behind that would be that it would create some employment on Skye, in the sense that the fire service would be deemed to be a worthwhile career for lots of young men and women, and it would give them an avenue to further their career by, I suppose, eventually transferring out to other bigger branches, bigger jobs like your own, perhaps even eventually. So there'd be a huge career potential. And I think with the vehicles that you have, a central location, for example, wouldn't be a hindrance, I would suggest, unlike maybe 10 years ago, when maybe the equipment wasn't as good as what it is today. I just wondered your thoughts on that, but I really, I would really like to get some information on the lack of availability in days rather than perhaps percentages, because I think the vast majority of the community out here are becoming aware of the problems facing you guys, and it just does need a one serious incident, and all of a sudden there would be an uproar. So I know you're doing your best with recruitment, and I know it's very difficult because I live here. We all live here, and we all know that the whole job market has changed completely from what it was 20 years ago, when for chief fire engine there were more men than they needed always, and they were there. They all worked in Portree, whereas nowadays people are scattered to the four corners of the island, or the four corners of Europe almost. So I would like to get some sort of hard fact information rather than just percentages. Sorry about rambling on a bit, but there we go.
Okay, Drew, thank you very much. I mean, I think Mike did indicate they were looking at an improved model that was being developed between the island authorities, but I think you make some very valid points there. So before we go to other members, I think we should maybe try and answer Drew's queries, Mike and Carla.
Chair, thank you. And Councillor, I understand your frustrations and I share your sentiment, and I think that's really important you understand that. I have kept the committee informed now for some significant period of time that we're running into these issues. Societal changes, pressures on the cost of living have really impacted upon, and Brexit as well, our lack of our labour market, which has returned to Europe, have really impacted upon the ability of employers to release people for secondary jobs, because they're feeling the pressures as well, and they can't afford to take on extra staff, and the impacts that have happened through COVID. So it's almost been a perfect storm. However, that does not detract, and you're quite right to point out about the fact that, and you are remarkably well informed, which is good, and I'm pleased about that, because some of the issues that I have discussed is that impact, and Carla and I take this very personal, that impact upon sending people away and impact upon their personal life, their primary employment, is something we have really focused on and driven at senior management, say this is not good enough. Skye has become very much a focus for the organisation. In fact, I can inform you that the Deputy Chief Officer has been involved in a conversation that I've had this week regarding the tripartite arrangement, and is very keen to see some movements up there. So the problem that we've got is these things have all come together, and we're seeing a huge downward trend, which is affecting. And you're quite correct in your assumption that should there be a serious incident, will we have a response? Now, I've been very honest and open about that as we've progressed over the past few months, and we've been incredibly fortunate that that's not actually happened, and we've adapted. One of the things that we picked up was, and it's just to show you that we're trying to keep ahead of the game as well, is that during the COVID period, we would not allow stations to go standby to cover absences where a station was off because of the COVID risk. That hadn't been updated by the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service, and we picked up on that, and that's now been amended for nationally to ensure that that gets back. So we will bring stations in to cover that. Carla's had a quick check for the 28th there while we've been talking, and she does inform me that Broadford and Portree were on for a period of time during that day. And that's what you will see, is we'll have very sporadic moments where the pumps are on and off across different locations within the area. My issue, of course, is that if I say Portree's off the run, and we know we have an issue with staffing, and that's a long-term issue that I have to address. If Portree's off Uig, and I'll talk about the BA issue, potentially that's a Dunvegan one you're discussing there, but if I talk about that north end at the moment, if I take a station from Broadford and say, right, I want you to cover all of Portree for that day, the impact that's having on the family members is huge. It's impacting the businesses, it's impacting the family members. So I'm trying to balance a set of scales all the time, because what we then get is people who are disaffected and say, I can't do this anymore, here's my pager. So the problem is that I need to find that middle ground that says, what can I provide as the best service at the moment? Be under no illusion, I am making an awful lot of noise about this, and that model you talk about is absolutely right at the forefront of my conversations, is that the retained and volunteer model, I'll go back slightly, the retained model we have doesn't necessarily work today. Okay, it does need a change. There's cost implications around that. So whether we look and say we have 56 stations in the Highlands, do we review that model and say, do we need more 30 stations that are on the run, more availability? Maybe it increases the geographical challenges and distances, but the response times are quicker. So there are a lot of conversations ongoing, but as you can imagine, 325 or 350 stations in Scotland, 2/3 of which are retained. With the pensions remedies, we've just put an advert out as an organisation for firefighters to group commanders to come and join us, because we're losing all our whole-time staff as well. It is a horrendous set of circumstances at this moment in time, and Carla and her team work so hard on the island to try and keep your appliances on. Now, I'll have a quick check with our authority, my managers, but I'm happy to supply that information to you to show that June, July, August, the changes that have happened between this time now and last year are significant. They've come up with some solutions. We've got some staff on the island who will work and they will travel about and they will keep appliances on the run. And we have a new model in place, and Carla can give you a bit more about that we pay them extra, we recompense them for doing this because they are available, and there's a spreadsheet available for them to do that. We're talking to the employers constantly. We're working, but this is one of the things that this tripartite arrangement, and I'm not necessarily agreeing with you that Broadford might be the best location, because I have looked at Broadford and Kyle and said, is there an opportunity to say, would that be better relocated to Callacan, for example? So, and we combine those two stations and we create a greater labour area to draw from. We put 2 pumps in there. So there's things I'm trying to think about how I go forward. But the challenges I've got is, you're a small microcosm of the national picture, and I need to make as much noise as I can for that, to make the national sit up and go, we need to pay attention to this, because your population's increasing, your age demographics are increasing, your care in the community is higher, therefore your vulnerability increases. And Police Scotland are in a very similar position, we know this. So the challenges that you've talked about there in regards to that feeling that people have in respect of, we don't want to join them because there's too much onerous on us to actually commit to the service. That is something I am really trying to address quite significantly. And Carla knows that, she's up to speed with all that. And I'm getting a bit of momentum there now. So there's some changes coming which will make it more of a local based delivery for that training, rather than that you've got to go to Invergordon for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
The one in the BA you pointed out is actually more of a policy and procedure issue that I've highlighted. We have two types of appliances in the island, RRUs and full-size appliances. The RRU requires a specific skill per seat, which means if that skill is not available, it doesn't go to the door. The full-size appliance requires a predetermined number of BA wearers. And these are, again, policies that were brought in many, many years ago. So our Area Commander, Derek Wilson, has gone back to our Deputy Assistant Chief Officer and highlighted some of these, and we keep revisiting that and saying, these, if you make these changes, they will have a more positive effect. That one that potentially, and I'm not sure if my guesswork's correct, but Dunvegan, you're absolutely right, there is an issue at Dunvegan where somebody's off for BA, and therefore the pump can't go out the door, but there is adequate crew. So you can imagine that's frustrating for us. So some of the things that we've also moved towards is that as managers, we'll get a call as duty to say, we have an issue, an incident, depending on that risk versus benefit analysis, we will say, could we mobilise that appliance with less and have maybe 2 appliances meet up to make a full team? So these are some of the things that we're really trying to do. I think we did that, and Carla maybe confirm for me, for one where we had a rescue in the trees of a glider, a pilot who had gotten stuck in the trees, and we mobilised a couple of appliances to make that up. And we also looked at that for a recent incident in Portree as well. So I absolutely understand your frustrations, and I've gone on quite a bit there, because I share those frustrations, because I do take it very personal. I started on Skye in 2018 and have a great love of the area, so I do share that. So please be rest assured I'm doing everything I can to try and move that forward. And if it's okay, I'll let Carla come in with some of the local arrangements she's discussed there. Is that okay, Councillor?
Yeah, I was also going to add something else once you finish, but I'm quite happy to listen to Carla first and then just chip in just one more thing, Chairman, if that's okay.
Okay, Carla.
Hello there. Just so I see Councillor Munro's had his hand up while you were talking, Mike. So I don't know if he's got a question specifically for you just now before I start.
No, we'll let you. We'll come in first, Carla. Then we'll go.
No
to
problem.
Councillor
No problem at all. Thank you. As you've correctly highlighted, there are challenges, well aware, and we are doing absolutely everything we can, and we are feeding everything back into the national picture, as well as Group Commander Collier correctly identified. It's a national issue, in fact UK-wide issue, not just Skye. However, it is pleasing to see, obviously, COVID restrictions have relaxed, so the pumps and crews are getting back out into communities, attending community events, which is also really highlighting our profile, allowing us to engage more with the public. We need people coming forward, so now we are in a position to get back out into the community. As we've kind of been behind closed doors, but with the exception of incidents for the past couple of years. So it's pleasing to see that the engagement's coming up. We do have 10 currently now in the process. We're looking for 2 to start their initial training in September and another 7 in November. So we are getting people through the process as quickly as we can. I do appreciate there may be frustrations in the time these things may take. But again, we are feeding local issues back in so things can be reviewed and improved. There's a lot of innovation within the area as well. The crews are coming forward with their own ideas. We're getting them involved in what can we do, what can they do to improve the picture at their level. The crews themselves, they are our best recruitment kind of tool, as it were, word of mouth. So to get them involved, they know the local people, the local landscape better than me and Mike, even though we've been here for a while, but to get them involved. And we have a few initiatives coming on. There's a pilot ongoing just now with import crews, where if a pump is on the run or has excess personnel, we can then move personnel to where they're needed. They do valuable work whilst they're at that station, whether it be community engagement, equipment testing, etc. And that is increasing our availability. And again, it's getting the more of a team ethic as well across the whole island with all stations. They're all very much on board, and there's dialogue between all stations now, which is fantastic to see. So I'd just like to say thanks to the dedication of the crews for the work they are doing as well in resolving these issues. Again, we've got Emergency Services Day coming up. We're in dialogue with our partner agencies there. We recently had a multi-agency exercise in Uig. So again, that's increasing our presence within the area and with our partners as well to try and overcome these challenges. Any questions?
Well, can I just come back there, Chairman, just before, and I'll be finished, I promise, then that'll be it from me for today anyway. Yeah, I appreciate all of what you're saying. I know that yeah, I think you're agreeing that things need to change and you need to maybe improve the model or change the model. And I know that it would be certainly, perhaps I know that certain people from, for example, on the Uig in the Uig fire station, they actually cover Portree when Portree because they work quite close to Portree, and I've worked for one particular person who has his kit with him, and he can go and join the Portree Fire Brigade to allow it to actually be on the run, which is quite good. So maybe that whole concept needs to be expanded, that people can join the fire station maybe at an incident rather than having to have all the engines off the run. But and I like the idea of maybe joining some stations together, and which brings me onto my point. My final point is that the Portree fire station, I would suggest, is no longer fit for purpose, given its location, and when I was on the council, before I took my 5-year sabbatical, I was quite involved with looking at having a new fire station, perhaps on the industrial site, where we're going to build another 400 and something houses over the next 5 years. So we need to relocate. If there's not going to be a single unit covering the whole of Skye, then we need to, and you're going to change your model to be more accommodating, perhaps, and having maybe larger areas covered. We need a new fire station in the north of Skye, and certainly in Portree, because, and I can see you nodding there, Mike, that it's certainly, the location is quite dangerous now, to be honest, given the modern day traffic it's involved. So I think we need to seriously look at a relocation, and perhaps go back to what we were thinking about probably 7 or 8 years ago, when the fire service reported to the Equalities Committee, which I chaired at the time in Highland Council, is looking at a blue light building, perhaps for the north of Skye, located on the Portree Industrial Estate, and there's plenty of land there available for a new fire station, new blue light building. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay,
Thank you very much. Councillor Monroe. Oh, sorry, do you want to come back in, Steve?
If I could come back in on that, sorry, Councillor Monroe, I'll get to you in just a minute. So if I could come back to you, Councillor Miller, you're absolutely spot on. The building is not fit for purpose. There are a couple of issues which I won't go into here, but what I can assure you is that last week, or maybe the week before, I was talking to one of our strategic leaders, and we're making an application into Scottish Government for some funding to look at the viability of what we call a tripartite arrangement, which will be fire, police and ambulance all in the one building. That building will potentially, the two areas that we've looked at, and I'm not sure how involved the members are with some of HIE, Stuart McPherson, and the Scottish Futures Trust, the redesign of Portree. We feature into that along with Police Scotland and the ambulance service as well. So I was very pleased to have that conversation with the director the other week. I've got a bit of a report to give back to him, because our intention is not to say we can't move forward, and Scottish Government don't want that as well. We can't have multiple buildings serving different organisations. If we can achieve something which meets the needs of the three organisations, then that's a winner for everybody. Plus then it points a single point of contact for community members to come and engage with us. So part of that as well is allowing sort of lecture room community facilities, which will mean that council people, etc., can come in and use the facilities as well. So there is significant work being undertaken at the moment. Sometimes it feels a little slow, but I would say that I'm surprised at the movement I had 2 weeks ago. And if I can get this done and Scottish Government put that funding forward to allow us to carry out the investigative work, then that should give some credence to it and say then. So then the idea is we would then approach the organisation and say, could we look at alternative manning model at that point as well? So the opportunities are there. They will take time, and I've always been open and honest with the members, and I'm hopeful that that's appreciated, that I've done that over the months and times that I've been in these meetings. I've always been straightforward and honest, that these things can't happen overnight, and I face the challenge of making the case for Skye when there are other challenges elsewhere as well. But things, Skye holds a lot of focus in the national picture. And unfortunately, we've seen that recently. And it does, when anything happens on Skye, there is a real focus because of in fact, a worldwide picture. You think about the tourist impact upon there. And I know that you're changing your infrastructure. You've got a Skye and Raasay infrastructure plan, Portree's development, and we need to fit into that. So I'd like to think, Councillor Miller, that hopefully you'll start to hear a little bit of news about that in the coming months. And we'll see some progress around that as well. And I certainly will keep you informed, and Carla will be part of that as well, so we can have those conversations locally if we need to. Does that suffice, Councillor?
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Monroe.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Mike and Carla. Thank you for coming into the Area Committee. I think, to be honest, Councillor Miller's first question and your response, both your responses, was very, very informative. I think if people were listening to this again online, we'll get a lot of the context in which you're working and many of the challenges. I think you touched, Mike, upon a locally based approach, and I think that's absolutely crucial. And you touched upon maybe making two appliances come together to make one team in a certain situation. And these are the sort of things I think which are critical when we look at the availability of some of the stations. I spoke to somebody earlier in the summer, and I asked how things were going with the fire service, and this person said, "Oh, it's 2 or 3 years since I left," and I was really surprised, because this was a person who I thought was sort of a type would be committed for life in every. He sort of fitted the bill in every way, and he started to talk about some of the things and some of the frustrations, I suppose, and the time commitment he had to give. I think perhaps too, he felt that some of the training wasn't relevant to his needs as a Skye-based firefighter, dealing with perhaps things that you might expect in a urban area, things like that. And I just wonder if, in terms of how many other former members have probably dropped out. So a couple of things. What can we do about encouraging these members who have the skills, the community heart, the will to be involved? What can we do to contact them and see why we're leaving? What would make them come back? The situation in Staffin is obviously very concerning. So if you can bring any light on where we are with that, that'd be useful. Uig and Dunvegan are both about 40% availability. Is not very reassuring. And just going back to the figures in the report, Carla and Mike, in Q4 for deliberate fires, just 8 deliberate fires, Q4 of last year. So I just wonder if there's any reason why that is so high. So I hope that there's 1 or 2 questions there. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Callum. Carla, Mike, do you want to come back?
I'll come in first. Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Munro, for that. So I'll cover a couple of them first. So the training element, we have core responsibilities we have to provide to our firefighters. I absolutely understand. We have in some other areas what we call a community response unit, and they only attend RTCs and wildfires. Okay, so there's one at Speenbridge, for example, that's your closest one. And they only get training on those specific matters. Now, if we changed the model and it became a volunteer station that attended only those sort of things, then we would work towards that. The issue that I have is that whilst a large percentage of Skye is obviously rural, you have quite significant urban built up areas. You have the Mary Fish plant, you have the Kyle base. You know, you think about the significant hazards and risks that you have on the island. Whilst it might not seem appropriate, it's a necessity. So what we did do is we trawled through what we call their learning modules, and we took it, for example, trains. So it's like you don't need to do trains if you're in the north end of the island. So we took them away. So that we have recognised that, and we've taken cognizance of that matter and moved forward with that one. So we do continually, Carla will continually review that, and we'll see what's appropriate to each station on an individual basis. The nature of your area and the Highlands is that predominantly it is wildfires and RTCs. We don't have a huge, thankfully, a number of building fires or other significant issues. For example, I was informed this weekend about hydrogen sulfide that may potentially escape from a barge within Portree that's sunken. So again, what we have to plan for is that eventuality, and that's the problem. Whilst it might not seem important at the time, we have that. As myself and Carla are saying, we get refresher training on aspects that we may not use from month to month, and that's unfortunately the nature of the beast. So in that respect, so the impacts that we talked about there that I've asked people have left, you're absolutely spot on. We have an exit interview with most of our staff, and we ask them why have they left. And again, I feed that back and talk about the fact that localised impacts are affecting our RDS. Now, you're looking at Skye, I'm looking at the Highlands as well, and I know that as an organisation within the Highlands, we have some really significant challenges around recruitment and retention. And part of that is what we've really highlighted is that localised requirements to try and reduce impacts and burdens. And that is gaining some momentum. There's absolutely no doubt about that. They finally sat up and listened to us and saying, yep, they're absolutely spot on. So we're getting some momentum in regards to that. And we're getting it from senior strategic individuals. So that means that I'm not banging my head against it. It's not, it's like the Shawshank Redemption. I keep going back, and I'm getting somewhere at last with it. So that happens. Now, staffing, and I'll let Carla cover a little bit more of that, more involved. We've got a number of people coming into staffing, and we've got 2 staff there who are really working over and above and beyond. They're working between Uig and Portree, and they're giving a huge level of commitment. The problem that we touched upon earlier with Councillor Miller is the RRU needs to go out with a certain number of staff with certain skill sets. So what we don't have within this period is someone who can take charge. And that's something I've had to look at. I was in Portree about 3 weeks ago. I came up for an evening visit to the station, met with the crews, and I had a chat with them about that because the 2 that were there. And I said, I maybe need to look and see if there's an option to get one of you onto what we would call a managerial level, which allow them to take charge of an appliance prior to them coming out of their probationary period. So I'm trying to get to the goal line quicker and the safest, and please, that's the thing that always is our priority. We have to keep our firefighters safe, because we know we need to make sure that they can do their job safely so they can then respond to the communities. So that's what's going on there with staff, and it will take, I've make no bones about that, it's going to take some time to address this matter, and we are working hard towards that. The Q4 deliberate fires you asked about, those were around the spike in wildfires we had. And Carla can vouch for that because Carla spent many days at most of them. I think we had the one on the island at oh, I forget the name of the place now, just up from Broadford.
Highland.
Okay, that's it. And then we had the one on Kyle, which was an extremely significant fire as well. So we've had a number of wildfires, but what I would point out is you will have seen in the press recently about the disposable barbecues, carelessness, maybe deliberate fires. Some of them are deliberate, but they may have been a discarded cigarette by accident. We haven't got people really running around trying to set fires other than the crofters doing what comes naturally to them. And to be honest, in most instances, they're really good and they work well with us. But occasionally, it sometimes gets out of hand. And that's the issue around that one. But that would be why we saw that spike in that period at that time. And if it's okay, I'll ask Carla to come straight in there and pass any further comment if that would support what I've just said to you, Councillor Munro.
Hi there. So I'll start off with staffing. So we've got let's say 2 very dedicated crew members. I'd like to give thanks to them for their ongoing enthusiasm and dedication to the unit. I've currently got a training plan with them, so they are training with, as Mike said, the Portree crew, learning from them. They've still in their development, so I'm keen to ensure that they don't fall behind with their development and their progression despite the circumstances. So they are doing well. They're coming to Portree. Some of them are doing import duties as well, so they're getting the operational experience as well with that. So that's ongoing, and it's reviewed quite regularly as well to make sure we're doing the best for them as well. They are doing their best recruitment wise as well, so we do have a couple from staff in the recruitment cycle, as it were. They're not quite near starting yet. They've still got a few more tests to do, but again, it's getting out in the community again. So I'm looking at getting one of them even to do a basic driving course, not a blue light course, but again, so they can take the appliance to attend community events and staffing and just raise the profile amongst the community. Mike says, we do exit interviews as well with the staff. It's engaging. Retention is very important to me as well as the service. So we do look at, doing the best for our staff and making sure that they have reason for staying. A lot of them want to stay, that's it. And sometimes it is things out with their control. The 2 we've had recently that have left is because they've moved or started work elsewhere, which affects their availability. But we do look into why folk leave with the risk profiles as well with the stations. Every station, as Mike says, has what we call a risk profile. So he's said trains, for example, high-rise buildings. These are things we don't need, necessarily in Skye, but there is a base level that firefighters need to meet their role. As we've touched on earlier, standbys, crews could get moved to somewhere else. So then we need to make sure that they're equipped, they've got the skills and the knowledge to face whatever they may face in their role. It's a safety thing as much as anything. And yet with the wildfires as well, 2 significant incidents this year. Again, dedication by the crews, and my thanks to them, but also my thanks to the local community as well for the assistance that they gave to the crews. I'd just like to put that out here just now. Again, work's going on with local landowners, our media team, comms. We're trying to get the message out. You know, unfortunately, the events in England, or fortunately, whichever you want to look at it, is raising the awareness of the impact that wildfires and just, you know, being careful in the countryside, especially a place as beautiful as ours. So we are, you know, joined up between our comms team, our local crews, working with landowners, etc., to try and get these figures down and make sure we're safe for folk.
Okay, thank you very much. Before I go to Councillor Miller, he did say he had a last comment, but he's clearly got another last comment. I keep harping on about it, Mike. You can married at 16, you can drive at 17, but you can't join the fire service till 17. Surely we need to be starting looking at that again.
Thank you, Chair. And yes, as I keep coming back to, unfortunately, we're looking at the cadet scheme, and there's a fire skills cadet scheme coming to the island in the next year. We're working towards that one, so that'll encourage our youth to come forward. It's the safety aspect of children in the environment, in the working environment. So when you're below that age of 18, employment legislation, as you will be aware, means that there are certain conditions that have to be established. Committing a 17-year-old into a burning building brings with it an inherent level of risk that's maybe not acceptable to, well, the UK-wide service at this moment in time. So I have to shy away from that at this moment. It's not something I've gone forward. One of the things I have challenged to try and improve is eyesight and colour blindness. We've pointed out that as society changes, we're on our electronic devices so much more now, and eyesight is something that, you know, you have to have perfect eyesight to join the service. So Carla and I have raised a profile of that. In particular, we've lost 5 individuals for colour blindness who do much more technical jobs during those periods of time as well. And these things are now being reviewed by the organisation and the National Fire Chiefs Councils. So that's some of the things that we feed back actually go to UK-wide discussions. So, you know, please be assured that we're looking at everything we can, every small opportunity we can to improve things is what we're looking for. And the children will, I think, it'll continually be a conversation we'll have, Chair, if I'm being perfectly blunt.
Okay, Councillor Miller.
Thank you very much. Sorry, but there's just 2 very quick points. One is, of course, the time that people have to go away for all that training. It might be simpler if the trainers came to us to do the training rather than be sticking in their little place in Inverness. But the other thing is, I wonder, just could you give us some update on what's happening just now? You referred to yourself, Mike, about the barge situation, because I see some of the emails coming in. There could be some sort of hazardous conditions, perhaps, and I just wonder, could you give us a brief update on regarding perhaps the potential for a danger to the public, especially along the walkway out towards where the barge is located? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. So you're absolutely right. That's part of that is the trainers and the health and wellbeing staff, etc., asking our candidates to come to them. I'm like, no, you come to us. And that's something we're shifting towards. Part of the courses we're saying where we can do anything which is computer-based, module-based, can be done on the station with the support. That's what we're moving towards. And then it would only be the core parts that we can't achieve locally would get done elsewhere. So that is absolutely the pathway we're working for. Now, in regards to the barge, I touched upon that, obviously talking about the training element. I was brought into the conversation this weekend by one of our hazmat officers who's liaising with the individual at the salmon farm because he had put an email out regards the fact that it was sunk, the potential for it, And then I think I need to double check the Scottish Government, etc. have come back and said we need to know that you have all your safe systems of work in place. So we're very much in the periphery just now, but the individual that had put it forward has been advised of the expectations, where they go with it, and to liaise with the right people. So at the moment, it's early stages. I'd see no risk to the public at this time. That is part of the responsibility of the actual duty holders, who are responsible for the salvage of that unit, and they will have to implement that and ensure that that's there. If it requires an emergency response, we will then respond and assist at that point in time. I know it doesn't give a very clear answer, but it literally was, I think, Sunday morning I got notified about it, so I was then aware.
Okay.
It's good that you are aware of it, though, because I noticed the emails coming in yesterday and even this morning as well, is that there may be a potential risk to people walking along the shoreline, because it's a very popular walk. But if you are aware of it, then obviously you will be called in if there's any possibility of stuff escaping, gases escaping, etc. So that's fine. Thank you very much.
Okay, I'm not seeing any hands. So Carla and Mike, I think you've given us a comprehensive report, but I think more importantly, you've been engaged in conversation and discussion about what we see as the key issues. And you've also indicated that you're moving forward and developing different models, and there's evaluations ongoing. So we can only thank you for that. And thank you once again for giving us your time, and no doubt we'll see you again in the near future.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you, members. Very appreciated your
Chair.
time. Take care.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye-bye. Okay, we're moving on to agenda number 9, the Isle of Skye and Raasay Winter Maintenance Plan. And we've got Gordon MacDonald, Roads Manager, with us. Over to you, Gordon.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, members. Can I start by adding my personal condolences to all those affected in the recent tragic events within Skye and Halsh. The Skye and Raasay Winter Service Plan sets out the operational details required to deliver a service and comply with the Council's winter maintenance policy. We have over 600 kilometres of road, and those the roads are split up into priorities within the hierarchy. These priorities are identified in, these priorities are split into primary, secondary, and other. Paragraph 5.3 identifies the lengths and percentages of the splits applying to that. Appendix B shows the route maps that identify the primary routes and secondary routes. Other routes aren't specifically identified on the plans, and they will be addressed as and when resources dictate. The daily forecasting, basically the service receives a forecast at midday, and the duty officer will review that and decide on the evening's action and morning action. There's an update at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, which may or may not change the situation. And if the weather forecast was to change overnight, and there be a significant impact on what was planned, our forecaster may contact the duty officer at 5 o'clock in the morning, who may then be able to amend the proposed action. In terms of staff, our staff establishment is a total of 16 operatives, and we have 2 modern apprentices that are currently being trained. Both of them are undertaking their HGV training at the moment. One is doing his theory test. The other has progressed on to actual driving training, and hopefully we're hoping for some success in the near future. In paragraph 7.1, which sets out the establishment, there has been a slight omission there, in that we also rely on 2 HGV drivers that are currently operatives in the quarry. So when the quarry is not, when they're not active in the quarry, they'll participate in our rota of drivers. And there is also 1 amenities operative that will also add to that tally. So effectively there's 19 operatives that would appear on the rota of HGV drivers. Vehicles and plant, we have 4 dedicated winter maintenance vehicles and 3 lorries that have demountable gritters available to put onto them, and 2 footpath tractors. Footpath tractors and pavements are generally undertaken by operatives in other parts of the service. We rely on our amenities colleagues and grounds colleagues to provide the workforce for treating the footpaths. In terms of treatment, the service is provided between 6 o'clock in the morning and 9 o'clock at night, with only primary routes being treated after 6 o'clock in the evening. Salt, our primary salt stores are in Sconser Quarry and Broadford, although we're currently constructing a new salt store facility at Brabus to replace Ferrybridge, and we do tend to store a small amount of salt at Skye to help out with the dead mileage that would be required in returning to Sconser. Usage-wise, in 21-22, I think our usage for salt was 3,000 tonnes. The year before that was 5,000 tonnes, so our averages tends to be around 4,000. Generally, the climate on the west coast is fairly marginal in terms of winter maintenance. You know, whilst that seems as if it would be easier, it's actually more tricky because we get wet mixed with clear skies periodically through the winter, and that's when things become rather difficult. Consistent cold weather is ideal, but unfortunately we're blessed with a lot of rain through the winter months. But in general terms, we tend to be marginal winters, and the council's winter maintenance policy and the winter maintenance service plan for Skye and McAllister takes account of the average winter, so it is capable to resource that. However, were we to get prolonged spells of snow and such like, it'll begin to put pressure on us, and we may have to reduce services to primary routes alone. I don't think I want to add anything else. If any members have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay, Gordon, thank you very much indeed. I think we are grateful to our workforce for the work that they do over the winter months and to the flexibility. Before we go to the members, just a couple of things in terms of the workforce. I see you've still got vacancies there. Are these 2 vacant posts, are they out for recruitment? Because I think it's important that we have as full a workforce as possible. And in terms of the Brabus storage area, what we don't want, as you say, is dead mileage. So I think it's really important that if our gritters are out, they're not spending more time unloaded than they are loaded. So will the Brabus depot be ready, do you think, for this winter?
In terms of Brabus, they're actively working at it at present, and it will be ready for this winter. And in terms of workforce, there's actually a bit of good news in that one of those posts, the roads inspector's post that was highlighted in the report, has been vacant. There is a new starting this morning. It's his first day. The technician's post is still vacant, and we'll actively chase that to see if we can find somebody.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Monroe.
Thank you, Chair. Just morning, Gordon. Thanks for that. Just echo Councillor Finlayson's appreciation for the work of all your operatives and officers. Just a couple of questions, Gordon. I suppose echoing John's comment on dead mileage. I mean, I'm sure you are making optimum use of tote score to reduce that dead mileage. Price of salt last winter was an issue highlighted for budget pressures. I wonder if you can make a comment on where we are for this coming winter. And just a particular road, Gordon, I can't remember what treatment it gets, if any, but that's the road between Staffin and Newig, the Bialoch Road. It's unclassified. presumably. So I presume it will be no treatment on that at any point, or does it get occasional treatment when there is capacity? Thanks, Gordon.
And
Yeah, over to you, Gordon.
Councillor Munro, the tote score is utilised during the winter and will continue to be so. We do have a store of salt up there. The gritter heads northwards in the morning, and it can recharge its load in tote score before returning back down through the Staffin area. The Kirang Road is another route. It will be treated when resources are available. However, it's also a route that, given its height and the steep slopes that lead to it, potentially is one that could be closed in the winter, because clearly there's an alternative primary route around the coast. But it does, in general, it does get treated as resources dictate. Price of salt, I believe the price of salt has continued to rise. I don't know the actual price personally, but I am very confident that it hasn't reduced in price. It's not just the price of salt. I think shipping's an issue as well, which is causing a problem with the price of salt. That's okay.
Councillor Milan.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Mr. MacDonald. Nice to see you. In Portree itself, there are 5 streets within the heart of the Portree, which are due to one of your previous incumbents. They are not adopted, and interestingly enough, the council saw it in their wisdom to build blocks of flats at the end of one of these particular streets. Will these streets be looked at favourably when they're needed to be gritted? Last year, 2 of your operatives went beyond their call of duty and helped out by gritting the pavements, and in fact a lorry driver actually gritted a couple of the roads because there are quite a few elderly people living in these streets, and they were reprimanded by the authority for doing that, I believe. So I would just like some reassurance that if they are not going to be gritted, we could at least have bins put in place so that perhaps some of the residents in the streets could actually make them safe, because some of the roads have slopes going out running onto the main road, which runs down past the primary school, and it's a busy road and it can be quite dodgy trying to stop your vehicle there, because nobody's actually gritted the roads leading onto Blavin Road. So, I would hope that maybe common sense. I know that there's budgetary restrictions, but 5 streets, I think it would be certainly helpful for them to be gritted, at least at the entrances of them, and perhaps the pavements to allow pedestrians to walk. And also, of course, children going to school have to use these pavements. So it would make common sense. And adding on the fact, of course, that the council in their wisdom have now built blocks of flats at the end of one of the unadopted roads, surely that one certainly would be looked at for gritting in the winter time. Thank you, Chairman.
The simple answer is the 5 streets that you refer to were never built to a standard that the council could adopt. Historically, there was an issue with the contractor going bust. I'm aware of the streetlights on those streets, but they have never been to a standard that could be adopted by the council. In terms of the streets having been gritted previously, I'm not aware of anybody having been reprimanded for treating streets or footways in that area. In fact, I believe last winter we were under the instruction of the Chief Executive to increase the level of footpath gritting throughout the council area during the COVID period. Now, with specific reference to the flats at the end of one of those streets, during the planning process and discussion that led into that development taking place, the roads were requesting that works be done to bring the road up to a standard that could be adopted, and that road would then be adopted. The service providing the development chose not to do that, but to undertake some minor repairs. So although we have this development having been built at the end of the road, the status in terms of the road has not changed. I would suggest that possibly the service may wish to request a grit bin for that particular road, and it ensure that it's available and replenished and whatever. In terms of the other streets, if there's a request from the public asking for grit bins, we will review that, and grit bins will probably be placed at the end of those streets.
Okay, thank you, Gordon. Drew, are you happy with that?
Well, not really, no. I mean, I know there's one street that was being built by a contractor who went bust many years ago, but as I said, originally, your previous incumbent decided to change the rules, I believe, as well. And anyway, it doesn't really matter about that. To be honest, I think that unadopted or not, pedestrians are certainly are at risk if it is particularly wintry. And thankfully we haven't done that much over the last few years. But I think it would be useful if the people on the wee little tractors were at least instructed, if there was frost, that they would cover the pavements on these unadopted streets, because pedestrians have to walk, and as I say, a lot of the residents are elderly. The ones that aren't have children walking to school, and the last thing we need is somebody falling and breaking an ankle or breaking a leg. And I think that for the costs involved, it's minimal, and the goodwill and the safety of the pedestrians is more important, in my opinion, anyway. But I would thank Gordon for his input there. I don't want to go into discussions about being adopted. We're never going to have them adopted now. I realise that. I think that in the instance of the flats, Chairman, I think that the housing service have a bit of a responsibility there for that particular street anyway. We need to remind them about that probably at a future date. When we speak to somebody from housing, maybe they'll be coming to one of our meetings. But the other streets, I think, certainly bins would help for the roadside of things. But I would hope that common sense will prevail regarding the pavement gritting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Drew, and thank you, Gordon. You have indicated you're going to wait to discuss that, and you can come back to us probably at a business meeting and give us an update round about that. And I'm sure Willie, our ward manager, will communicate with housing just to say this has been discussed, and we'd like them to liaise with you, Gordon.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm not seeing any other hands. So as always, Gordon, we know how busy you are and there's lots going on, but we do appreciate you coming to area committee. And no doubt we'll see you at an area business meeting in the near future. And once again, thanks for your time and for your report.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, members, we're moving on to item number 10. This is the presentation regarding the Portree Harbour levelling up update. And we've got Gary Smith with us. Now, just to say, should Gary's presentation go beyond and discussion go beyond 12 o'clock, I'll be leaving. As I say, I've got a meeting with the Scottish Government about the incidents that have been happening in Skye. So Councillor Munro will then take over the chair. But over to you, Gary.
Morning, members. I would just pass on. I was saddened to hear the news on Skye as well. I've been through Skye quite a lot recently, so a lot of involvement there. So yeah, my heart goes out to everybody. But hopefully I won't keep you too long this morning. It's a brief update on the Uig harbour development. So what I'll do is I'll just share my screen and start this presentation.
I thought it was Portree Harbour you were on today, Gary.
What did I say? Sorry.
You said Uig.
So that was I misspoke there. Yes, it is very much Portree Harbour. Yep. Obviously involvement in Uig as well at the moment. But yeah, Portree Harbour. So Yeah, morning members, morning everybody. So I'll take you briefly through the levelling up bid. For some reason that's not working. Okay, that seems to be back on track now. The council officers have been working with the community groups for the last 6 months or so to develop the proposal to improve the historic Thomas Telford Harbour and Quay Street and provide new opportunities for improved cruise ship facilities, a new breakwater to provide shelter for the harbour, and an improved harbour infrastructure. So the bid was submitted at the start of August to the UK government. The overall bid is for 55 million. The overall package of work is 55.4 million. And there's a 90% grant involved in the levelling up fund, so the grant is just under £50 million for this particular project, and it's part of the Culture and Town Centre Regeneration Fund, which forms part of the levelling up fund bid. So hopefully you're seeing the plan of the proposal. So I'll talk you through the plan on the screen. First of all, the cruise ship berths. So what we're proposing, or what has been proposed by the community, is construction of a cruise ship berth. So that's for vessels up to 8.5 metres draft. So passengers can access the shore via a fixed link. So that green element there is a fixed link bridge structure on open piles. So that's rather than what they do currently, is they moor out in the bay, and they use their tender to ferry passengers back and forward to the landside facilities. But what we're doing is creating that fixed link so boats can physically berth. And that process will make that transfer much quicker and more integrated with Portree and the services that we have there. So next item on the plan is the breakwater, and this is key to the new larger harbour area, and this will create shelter for the inner harbour in Portree. That breakwater is accessed by a new access road formed round the lump from the entrance at the Longstay car park. So this is a 6.5 metre wide access road with it's got footpaths on either side, but the main footway is 4.5 metres wide, footway cycleway, which will provide much better footway links to Portree and down to the harbour. There are proposals for pontoons for up to 100 small boats created behind the breakwater, and that also includes a new slipway. The proposal also includes an extended pier to improve facilities for small commercial vessels, a new harbour office, and lifeboat berth to improve the facilities for the RNLI. They're actually funding that proposal themselves. It's not part of the bid, but well, it's included in the bid and it's included in the work, but that is funded through RNLI themselves. In terms of Quay Street, there's opportunities to change the environment in Quay Street. It's within the historic harbour area, and to remove access for buses and heavy vehicles from that street. So the premise of the scheme is to try and make a much more pleasant environment within Portree Harbour. Last part of the proposal is there's, as you all know, there's a large tank farm, oil storage tank farm there, some of which is now pretty much redundant. They use some of the tanks, but not all. and the proposal looks to remediate and remove those tanks so that we can prepare that area for any development within the harbour area. We're not proposing any specific development of that area within this proposal, but it would give opportunities for the harbour area. So effectively, the application's in, and should the levelling up fund be successful, the scheme will go through an environmental impact assessment, a full planning process and design stage to get to the required consents for the construction. And the funding is available to 2026. So hopefully, if we are successful, we can push on with the consenting process and the design process for the scheme. So that's really all I've got to say on in terms of the presentation. So I can open up for any questions that you have.
Okay, thanks, Gary. I think members would like to thank you for the engagement that has taken place over recent months and the acknowledgement of the importance of working with the community in a partnership way. And I think that's what's enabled us to have such a strong bid. And as you say, with a bit of luck, hopefully we'll get a positive response. Okay, Councillor Millen.
Thanks very much, Chairman. Thank you very much, Gary. Obviously, having had a 5-year sabbatical, I'm sort of out of the loop regarding this, but I mean, it's like a dream coming true, to be honest. We've been in my previous terms, that was something that we obviously prioritised, or we saw, some of us saw as a huge priority, and you know, I think to have the tanks removed for a start would be a massive improvement on its own. And it would be quite interesting if once that land was cleared and restored, you might even see an hotel being built on there once again, because that's what it was before the beautiful hotel was knocked down to replace it with oil tanks. I'm old enough to remember those great days in the past. And obviously this plan is, I just think it's fantastic. Absolutely, if it comes to fruition, it'll just be the best thing since sliced bread, to be honest. Just a couple of questions about it. You may hopefully be able to help, and maybe Gordon MacDonald, if he's still on with us, might be able to help. Obviously, the biggest problem for that development, one of the problems will be at the junction onto Bank Road, onto Bridge Road, I beg your pardon, there, because at the moment the junction is not really fit for purpose. I would suggest, given especially in the tourist season, a lot of people accessing the Bayfield car park. It's quite a narrow junction there and quite a narrow entrance down into Bayfield. So, you know, if for example you were making the Key Brae and everything pedestrianised, there'd be a lot more vehicles using the new road going round the lump. And I just wonder, has there been any talk about improving that junction, and also perhaps taking a road from the junction below the high school off the trunk road down towards the Bayfield car park and linking up that area as well? I just wonder if that's anywhere in the council's plans, though it may be out with this particular bid, so I apologise for that.
Will I answer that now?
Yeah, go for it, Gary.
Yep. There haven't been any discussions about upgrading. The upgrading of that junction hasn't been included in the bid so far. I can appreciate the points you're making in terms of that junction, but we will address if we're successful in the bid, we will address the issues of access through the detailed design. So that junction will be assessed, and we'll make recommendations through that process.
That's fine, thank you. No, it's fine.
Councillor Monroe.
Thank you, Chair. I have no questions for Gary. I mean, I think it's really appropriate this comes to area committee, so it's good to have this paper and certainly your presentation, Gary. Just to echo the Chair's words, thank you to you and all the other Highland Council officers who've been involved, but This was obviously has been come in collaboration with the community, with the Portree and Braes Community Trust and the Harbour Group. So really important, and I think that's what's enhanced this bid. I think it's an excellent bid. So just have to wait and see. But thanks for that, Gary.
Yep, I mean it's got. I can't really comment on how good a chance it's got, but I mean the bid itself is positive. The scheme has a positive benefit to cost ratio, and we've put in, I think, a strong bid, and it's well supported by the community, and we've really appreciated the letters of support that we've had, and that all goes with the bid as well. So that I think we've put as strong a bid as we possibly can. So I just got my fingers crossed.
Okay, thanks, Gary. And irrespective of, I suppose, what happens in terms of the bid, the work, the preparatory work that's been done and the engagement that's been done is going to be useful anyway, because it's a project that it's irrespective of the bid that at some stage is going to have to happen. So the work that's been done is going to be really useful irrespective of where we end up. Okay.
Yep, agreed.
Okay, not seeing any other hands. Gary, as always, thank you very much, and
right.
I'm sure we'll be in touch about various harbours over the piece in the near future.
Yeah. Okay. Right.
Okay.
Bye.
Cheers, Gary.
Bye.
Okay, members. I'm conscious that we might make 12. That's great. Good. So our next item is ward discretionary grants, and it's really just for noting that we've awarded grants to Stafford Primary School Parent Council, Headway Highland, and Portree and Braes Community Trust. Are we happy to note these grant awards?
Noted.
Okay, thank you very much.
Noted.
Okay, that brings us to the end of our first area committee members. Can I thank you for your involvement? I think very clearly officers today understand that we are going to be a proactive area committee, and we are going to scrutinise and question them, and we are going to make sure that we get the best for our residents here in Ward 10. So thank you very much, and have a good rest of the day, and I'll catch up with you later.